Well, hello and happy new year. Welcome to the seventh Plant Powered Challenge brought to you by Corewell Health. Who is excited to make some health changes in 2025? I'm Elizabeth Suvetti, and I oversee the culinary medicine programming for Corewell Health. And I'm joined by my colleague today, Dr. Christy Artz, who is our lifestyle medicine medical director. Welcome, Christy.
Hi, Elizabeth. So excited to be here with you.
And we are also joined by over 2,700 other people who have signed up to make the change in 2025 to start to incorporate more whole plant-based foods in their diet. Congratulations to all of you for joining. It takes big steps just to sign up and even bigger steps to start to make some of those small changes that have such long-lasting impact. Over the years, we've had over 9,000 people participate in the Plant Powered Challenge. And of those people that we have surveyed over the years, we've seen some really outstanding changes to their health. Many of them have reported making at least one behavior change throughout the challenge. 99% of the people surveyed reported experiencing at least one health benefit as a result of the Plant Powered Challenge. Many of those things Dr. Artz will elaborate on today as we speak, but oftentimes we see weight loss, people have more energy, they sleep better, and also just having that sense of being supported. Oftentimes people can feel alone sometimes when they want to make changes, and really having that community to help encourage them make that change can be very impactful. So really throughout the challenge, it's not meant to be complicated. It's very simple. It's not always easy, but really just trying to figure out ways in which you can start to incorporate more of those whole plant-based foods in your diet throughout the challenge. And we really hope beyond that as well. So we have Dr. Artz here today, and Dr. Artz works really closely with many of our patients within lifestyle medicine. So Dr. Artz, I was wondering if you could share with the group today some of the things that you see when people start to make some of these health changes.
Absolutely. And welcome, everybody. We are so thrilled that you've joined us for this 4-week challenge. And, Elizabeth, as you mentioned, this is the 7th year. And I think about our first year of the challenge, I think we had a group of 20 people that were plant curious, and we came together. And that was really how this plant powered challenge started. And from that, it's grown just exponentially. I think it speaks to the interest that people have in plant-based eating. And more importantly, whether you choose to use that term, plant-based, or if you're just curious about ways that you can begin to improve your health, improve your nutrition, whether that's for you, your family, maybe it's friends and coworkers that you're interested in doing this challenge with, there can be a variety of reasons that I might see someone in our lifestyle medicine practice who really wants to work one-on-one with our team to improve some of these health behaviors, or something like this challenge where you're excited to be in a community, thousands of people who know that nutrition is so important. It's truly the building block to our health. And that's some of what I'd like to share with all of you today briefly. Now, Elizabeth, you asked, what are some of the changes that we see in some of the people that we work with in our lifestyle medicine practice? And I would say resoundingly, number one, they feel that they've discovered a whole new way of eating that makes them feel good. They feel less fatigue. So they have improved energy levels. I often hear from our patients that they're sleeping better. If they're, into fitness or like to move their body and exercise, that they find they recover more quickly when they begin to eat more whole plant foods. And they find that they can really adopt new culinary practices too. And I know you'll speak to some of that, but there's such variety in our whole plant foods. And it's just really an exciting way to eat, both for your health, your personal health, the health of the planet. And then many of our patients go on and have a very positive impact on the people around them. Again, their friends, their coworkers, their family members. But Elizabeth, you said something earlier that I think resonates with me, and it also resonates I think with many of, again, the people that we see in our medical practice is that many of these changes are simple, but they're not easy. And so we hope over the next 4 weeks, we can give you not just the knowledge, but some skills, some tools, and hopefully take some of the conflict and confusion around healthy eating and what we've learned works best for many people. It will be individualized to you, but it will also, these concepts really ring true across many, many people and populations as well. So if I could, I'd like to share a couple slides just briefly about lifestyle medicine in general, and then also looking at why is this plant-powered challenge important? So talking first about lifestyle medicine in general is we use these 6 pillars, is what we call them, to really help patients improve their health, reduce the impact of chronic diseases. And we talk about healthy eating. So again, that's why we're here for our plant-powered challenge. We talk about movement and physical activity. We speak to the importance of healthy stress management, the importance of social connection and relationships, the importance of good sleep quality. And as I mentioned, great nutrition can impact sleep quality. And then, of course, reducing things like tobacco and nicotine use, if that's relevant to you. When we apply these 6 pillars as the prescription, if you will, for lifestyle intervention, we find that patients see very dramatic health improvements. So we might see blood pressure. Someone who has hypertension might see an improvement in their blood pressure. Someone who has type 2 diabetes may find that their blood sugars are much better controlled and they need less medication. Someone with high cholesterol similarly may find that their cholesterol levels have improved dramatically because we're eating more of these whole plant foods. So there's a variety of health outcomes that patients might achieve when they adopt a whole food, plant predominant dietary pattern. Where we're often starting from is what you see here in this slide. Now, this is information population-wide, and I don't think it will come as a surprise to many of you that most of the food, even that we see at our supermarkets, we see a lot of foods that are packaged and highly processed. These are foods that are convenient, no doubt. And oftentimes that's why these foods are chosen over foods that need to be cooked and prepared and chopped and prepped. However, when we're thinking about our long-term health outcomes, really focusing on expanding the intake of these whole plant foods. So you can see currently about 12% of our calorie consumption comes from these minimally or unprocessed whole plant foods. So these are going to be things like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, which are beans, chickpeas, lentils, nuts and seeds. And I can't forget also our herbs and spices. So these whole plant foods really confer many different health benefits. And the goal of this challenge over the next 4 weeks is really to expand the intake of these whole plant foods. Oftentimes that will have a great effect of crowding out some of these more processed foods. So I always like to think about a positive prescription. So thinking about adding in rather than subtracting out. Let's add in more of these whole plant foods and really grow that 12% to a much higher number if we can. Now, when we do that, when we increase the consumption of our whole plant foods, what we're doing is improving our dietary quality. And what I'm showing you here is kind of a complicated diagram, but it's also incredibly powerful. What you see are different healthy plant-based eating patterns that adhere to these concepts of really being predominantly whole plant foods. And what's so exciting, I think, about this visual is you can see there are many different cultural dietary patterns that match up very well with these components of whole plant food eating. And over the next 4 weeks, we'll be breaking that down, what that means a little bit more. But I wanted to share this visual because there is a lot of confusion around, well, if I'm plant-based, do I have to be vegetarian or vegan? And the answer is it's kind of up to you and what your health goals are. There are many dietary patterns that are centered on whole plant foods, and you see many of those examples here on that circular diagram. Now, when we shift to a pattern of eating that's centered on whole plant foods, as you can see in that middle portion of the diagram, we can see improvement in chronic inflammation. So that might give us the benefits of less joint pains, less hypertension, less uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, as an example. We see an improvement in what we call this epigenetic aging. Nutrition has a big impact on our genes, our DNA, whether genes are turned on and off. And we can sort of slow that aging process as we eat more of these whole plant foods. I won't go through each of these different areas, but there are so many health benefits that occur at the physical, at the mental, and at the cellular level that we get from our whole plant food intake. And then ultimately, this gives us the benefit of adding years to life and life to years. And that's something that a mentor of mine, Dr. David Katz, will often say when he speaks to the importance of lifestyle change, and in particular, eating more whole plant foods so that we can be healthy, have more vitality, have better energy, and do the things that we love to do. Now back over to you, Elizabeth.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Artz. I think it's really helpful for people to hear, the impact. I think oftentimes we hear like, oh, eat your fruits and vegetables and things like that. But I think as people age, really, learning about the importance of it, how it does impact their health. I always speak about how people think about like, oh, am I saving for retirement? Will I have enough money when I retire? But I also think about if people are not taking care of their health and investing in their health at any age, young on up, when they get to that point where they can retire, if they don't have that ability to do all the things they want to do and have that body that can move and not be on a lot of medication, that's not good either. So I think people really need to think about at any age, making sure they're investing in their overall health and making sure that's something they do every day. It's not just something you wait till the end and then that's when you start focusing on those types of things. So I know sometimes right now people might be feeling like overwhelmed potentially, like, okay, where do I begin? They're telling me I should be eating these foods. And so we just want to talk through some tips that might help people just set you up for success as you go through this challenge. And one of the things, I am a chef by background, so I love talking about food and different ways people can incorporate foods into their diet. But a big thing is just making sure you have a well-stocked kitchen. And so that you have the things that are there so that you have those go-to things. So one, it can just be from pantry perspective, having canned beans there, having some spices, maybe some sauces or other things that are going to help you make a nice dish. Having a refrigerator that's stocked with some various fruits and vegetables, having whole grains. And we talk about whole grains. Next time when you're at the store, rather than grabbing the white rice, go for the brown rice. It's going to take a little bit longer to cook, but just get it cooking as the first thing that you do as you start your cooking. So that way, when you're done, hopefully the rice finishes at the same time everything else does. I love using an oven to roast vegetables. I know a lot of you are working, you don't have a lot of time to pull a meal together. It does not have to be an elaborate meal. It can be as simple as putting a whole grain on to cook, roasting some vegetables in the oven. Perhaps you're going to throw some spices on them, opening a can of beans, perhaps heating them up. And that can be a complete meal in itself. I know a lot of you may also enjoy cooking and you may want to go more elaborate with your cooking, and we always encourage that. We want people to know it doesn't mean that you have to be an expert chef to be able to still eat this way. There's a lot of different ways in which you can do that. Having nuts and seeds. I love toasting nuts. When you toast nuts in the oven for about 6 minutes or so, it adds such a wonderful, like aromatic, nutty type taste. Pecans are one of my favorite when you toast them. They just really pop in flavor. Throwing various seeds and things, that could be ground flaxseed, hemp seeds, chia seeds. They add a nice crunch, they add color. We say you eat with your eyes, so if it doesn't look delicious, you're oftentimes not going to want to eat it in the first place. And for some of you who are in a hurry, looking for some of those grains like quinoa or barley that cook a lot quicker so you can pull a meal together. Lentils are another great thing to cook. They're high in protein, high in fiber, and they cook pretty quickly. So I often keep yellow lentils and red lentils in my pantry. That way I can pull them out and incorporate them into dishes. They're a great thickener for soup. I know right now if you're in Michigan, you're in the cold season. Soups are a great way to have a nice hearty meal, throwing some vegetables in. Um, and any of those leafy greens that you can throw into dishes, I often say if you're making a dish and when it's done, ask yourself, could I throw in some leafy greens at the end? It
Always.
could be chopped kale, spinach, but you need to have those things in your refrigerator to pull from in the first place. And so just being conscious of when you go to the grocery store this week, if you do have time to go, think about what are some extra produce you can grab, throw them in your basket to get them. If you are someone who doesn't go shopping as often, that's when I love those cruciferous vegetables, those broccoli, kale, cauliflower. They last a lot longer in the refrigerator. And so those are things, even bell peppers tend to last a while. And so you can kind of stock up on those and use them throughout the week. You don't have to be buying them every single week.
Mhm.
Dr. Artz, I'd love to hear, even in your own home, like what are some things you're eating this week that you have planned coming up in terms of ingredients you're incorporating or some of your favorite go-tos at home?
Mhm. Well, you mentioned rice. So last night we had a meal and used wild rice. And, I've got kids in the home and they really enjoyed that. We had it alongside of some braised cabbage. Now that sounds really fancy, but it was literally taking a head of cabbage, cutting it into wedges, putting it into, like a Dutch oven and cooking it, baking it for about an hour with some carrots and some onions. A really warm, hearty meal. We put some tofu and some chicken. Those were options. So again, if you're thinking that you may have some people in your family, in your household that aren't going to, immediately go to something like tofu or another type of legume, having some of that flexibility in the protein sources, and then adding in some of those other whole plant food sides like a wild rice or a brown rice or quinoa you mentioned. The cruciferous vegetables, so yeah, your broccoli, your cauliflower, your cabbages, your Brussels sprouts, they're so readily available this time of the year. And that's oftentimes where you can get both the greatest nutritional value, but also where you can stretch your food dollars even more is eating foods that are both in season. And I know it's something that we often will comment on is frozen fruits and vegetables are always going to be a great option. They have wonderful nutrition. They really lock in that freshness and the nutrients when they're sort of flash frozen, when they're harvested. So always consider that a great option. And next time you go to the supermarket, maybe think about, throwing in an extra bag of some broccoli or cauliflower, whatever looks good. Just make sure it doesn't have anything added to it, added salt or sugar or a sauce. And if you just get that vegetable or fruit, that's always going to be a good option, especially if you've got a busy household or, you're trying to think of some easy things that you could even take to work with you as well.
Yeah, I like you mentioning about the cost of some things because I think oftentimes there can be misconceptions that eating healthy can be expensive. And I would argue the opposite in some cases. When you look at the cost of some of the processed foods and some of the meat products, prices are definitely on the rise. When I think about what it costs to buy dried beans or canned beans, or some of the various vegetables, and just being conscious of even what's on sale each week. I know some of the various grocery stores will run ads and specials on various vegetables. And so I think being flexible to kind of shop as things are on sale or in season, as you mentioned, the frozen options are always great too, to do that. And I think for people also who don't have a lot of time, trying to do some meal prepping ahead of time. So oftentimes I'm like you, I've got kids at home. And so sometimes when they're getting ready in the morning, to get out the door. I might pull some veggies out of the refrigerator and just start chopping them up and then setting them aside in a bowl in the fridge. So later that night, I can kind of throw them into whatever dish I'm making. So just kind of finding those pockets to cook. And I love cooking, but I don't always have time to cook. So oftentimes I try to cook in batches. I might like double a recipe or even triple it. sometimes throwing some of that in the freezer so that way I can pull it out later. I have teenage boys and they seem to always be hungry. And so just trying to have some of those things on hand so I don't have to always feel like I'm trying to like prepare meals every time for them can be helpful. And I
Mhm.
know the reality is people are also going out to eat. They're also looking for some of those quick meals sometimes. And so I challenge everybody as they are kind of, if you're eating out this month, just be more conscious of looking to things, even asking at different restaurants, can you add something to it? Oftentimes, if I say, like, if you can you add some vegetables to a dish I'm ordering, most restaurants are pretty comfortable doing that and adding those things. You could even ask to have your dishes cooked with olive oil rather than butter, and just being very conscious of some of the dishes that you're ordering. Maybe
Mhm.
starting with like a hearty soup or a hearty salad to start a meal can be another way to help give you some of that bulk and help you feel satiated. So maybe you're not eating as much of those more high calorie, not as nutrient dense dishes. So
Mhm. Yeah, and one of the things that you mentioned, and we're speaking to this concept of adding in more of these, colorful, or a lot of our whole grains aren't necessarily colorful per se, but they really pack, great nutrition, and healthy amounts of fiber and good quality calories. So, one of the goals that we oftentimes will look at, as we're working with people in lifestyle medicine practice, is really increasing that plant diversity. And what we mean by that, it's almost the same thing as eating the rainbow. But when we increase that plant diversity, we're getting different types of fibers, different types of phytonutrients that are contained within these whole plant foods. And it can help us replenish and grow a healthy gut microbiome that has a big impact on our cognitive health, our mental health. We can start to notice that some of the symptoms maybe that we've lived with for many, many years. I'd encourage you to monitor how you feel week by week as you go through this challenge. It's not just weight, of course, there's so many other metrics and markers for good health. And I'd encourage you to think about what are some, areas that you're hoping your health could improve, in 2025. We're doing this at the beginning of the year. It's a great time to really set some goals and intentions for this year so that you can see some health improvements. And when you're thinking about making some health behavior change around, for example, nutrition that we're going to be speaking to, throughout this challenge, really noticing and bringing awareness to how you're feeling, what those changes, maybe brought up for you. Why were you doing some of the patterns that you had found yourself in, maybe for months or years or decades even? It's always the right time to make a positive health behavior change. So if you're someone that's joined the challenge, and, Elizabeth, you mentioned earlier, maybe you have entered into retirement. It's a great time to make some healthy lifestyle changes. Maybe you're starting a family or thinking about starting a family. That's a great time to really set up, your household and your environment to really encourage great nutrition, because it is truly the building block. It has an impact on not just prevention of chronic disease, but can also help with that disease reduction and oftentimes even chronic disease remission. We see that very often in patients that we're working with in our lifestyle medicine practice who really can achieve that disease regression and remission when we start to get these very important health behavior changes, oftentimes starting with nutrition in place. So it's an exciting time to make changes. We're going to have a great team supporting all of you Plant Powered Challenge participants over the next 4 weeks. Maybe Elizabeth, you can share a little bit more about what they can expect to see over the next few weeks.
yeah, definitely. Dr. Artz, I like how you mentioned about people feeling better and reflecting on that as they go through this. We had a group recently of lifestyle medicine team members, and we were just reflecting on 2024 and our various programming. And one of the things that was brought up is that people that have gone through our gut health shared medical visits have really experienced a lot of significant changes. And we were trying to reflect on like, well, why is that? What might be some of those reasons? And Chef Sam, one of the chef instructors for that program, said because they feel better so quickly. And so what happens is that as they're making those changes, as they're going through that program, they just start to feel so much better that they just keep on that trajectory of really trying to incorporate those changes throughout that program. And so I think the same really holds true here is that people really need to think about how are they feeling and do they start to feel differences in their body, which we anticipate they will, which hopefully helps them go well beyond those 30 days of the challenge. While we kind of say it's 30 days, it's really meant to be a starter for people to hopefully continue well beyond that and really have some of that lasting change. One thing I want to ask before we get to some of the fun things that are coming, Dr. Artz, is, throughout this challenge, for some people it may come really easy. They may, jump right in and throughout it, people will be getting these weekly emails. And in the emails, there's kind of like, here's something we'd like you to focus on, and also some more, another level of challenge. I think about like when they do workout classes, it's kind of like you can do this or you can modify it and make it a little bit more difficult. For some people who may find some challenges as they go, when you're working with patients, are there some things when you find that people hit barriers or just challenges that kind of help them get through some of those struggles, or things that kind of help set them up for success to really be able to make the changes they're hoping to make?
Right. So we've tried to, give you that framework with the challenges and how they're designed. We have incredible health coaches on our lifestyle medicine team, and they've really put their expertise into designing these challenges very intentionally to be very small and achievable. And that is something that I would share with all of you as participants. Even if you feel like you have a really long road in front of you to making healthy dietary changes, what I encourage you to do is select one very small, very achievable change, because the process of change occurs and supports itself when we start to see forward progress. So that might mean you want to just focus on the challenge that we've suggested and invited you to take on in our weekly emails. So I think this week was eating a different color, whole plant food each day of the week. And we've given you a nice chart to even kind of track your progress. Many people do really well when they track their progress visibly. So you might even think about printing off that tracking form, or even creating a SMART goal for yourself. We've also provided a worksheet that tells you how to create that SMART goal so that it's specific, it's measurable, it's actionable. And we want you to really feel like you can achieve the goals that you've set out for yourself. Don't try to boil the ocean. I would say that's kind of the biggest piece of advice that I would share with all of you is any change that you're making where you're including and adding in more whole plant foods is making a positive impact on your health. So you don't need to make some radical change. That works well for some people, not many, but don't boil the ocean. Break it down into very small, achievable steps, and know that we're going to be with you every step of the way. And we're going to provide you again with the knowledge, the tools, the skills that are going to help you be more successful.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Artz. It's always helpful hearing, knowing that you do engage with so many people through each day, each month, and start to see kind of that formula to help make different changes throughout time. So the exciting thing is the Plant Power Challenge is still open for registration. So for anybody who, I know all of you have registered, but if there's anyone else in your community, anyone else you work with that you think might enjoy this, feel free to share the registration link with them. They can still register. We tend to leave it open the entire month so that way people kind of can continue to access the content. And it is for anyone, anywhere, and it's completely free. So we encourage you to share that information. We are so grateful that you have signed up to join. We really hope that you kind of jump full into making the change, and you're open to incorporating some of the various recommendations we have throughout. As we always say, you always should work with your physician for any very specific medical care and treatment that you're working towards. We are here to kind of give some general guidance and knowledge, but really, if you do have any specific medical conditions, please do work directly with your medical care team. And the cool thing too is there's so much great content. So I know some of you will gravitate towards the cooking demonstrations. Either you know how to cook and are looking for some different tips, or maybe cooking this way might be somewhat new to you. We do have 4 virtual cooking demonstrations that will happen throughout this challenge. We have a variety of chefs, registered dietitians, lifestyle medicine physicians, health coaches that will be sharing a lot of their knowledge with you throughout this. We'll cover various topics like food cravings, ditching the diet cycle, cooking and eating for heart health, plant protein. That can always be one that can be a challenge for people. Learning more about that and how you can get great protein through various plant sources. We'll talk around some truths versus trends around plant-based eating. So hopefully you find things throughout this challenge that are helpful for you, to give you the knowledge that you need to really grow towards that optimal health. You also get to hear firsthand from patients. So we're grateful that there are some patients who want to share their journey and experiences, because oftentimes we find you really can't do it alone. And when you hear from others and some of their stories, it can be very impactful to know kind of where they started, and how some of the changes they made impacted their health overall. Um, so with that, we want to just say thank you. We're glad you're here. Give it a try. Perhaps when you're at the grocery store this week, get some different produce, try something different, try some things you're familiar with. For dinner tonight, I think I've got a cauliflower in my refrigerator. I'm going to roast that in the oven. I'm going to pull out my favorite marinara sauce. I've got some whole wheat pasta I'm going to cook up. I'm going to open a can of cannellini beans tonight, and that's going to be the dinner I'm going to make tonight. It's quick, it's fast, it's going to be delicious. So
Sounds
really
delicious.
focus on the basics and you'll be really successful with this challenge. So thank you, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you throughout the next 30 days.